Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a really powerful tool for planning and, well, for getting better at pretty much anything. It's called a gap analysis.
At its heart, the whole idea is actually incredibly simple. Just think of it like a journey, right? On any map, you've got two critical points, where you are right now and where you want to end up. That space in the middle, well, that's the gap, and that's what we're here to talk about. So to put a more formal definition on it, a gap analysis is basically the process of comparing where you actually are with where you want to be. It's the method you use to draw a clear step-by-step map to get you across that gap we just saw.
Now, don't let that simple idea fool you. A real gap analysis is a pretty big deal. It's definitely not a weekend project. We're talking about a serious undertaking that involves a ton of data, a bunch of different teams, and can easily take weeks, months, or sometimes, even years to do right.
Okay, so let's get into it. The very first step on any journey is knowing exactly where you're going. Before you can find any gaps, you have to define what good even looks like. You've got to set your baseline.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How does a company or a team decide what its goal is? You can't just say, we want to be better. You need something solid, something you can actually measure yourself against. And this is where established frameworks are super helpful. A lot of organizations will use well-known standards as their destination, like the ones from NIST, that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or they might use an international standard like ISO 27001. And of course, you can always build your own custom standards that are perfect for what you do.
And these baselines, they're not just some abstract idea floating around. No, they give you a real solid framework to look at the nuts and bolts of your organization. Everything from how well your people are trained to the nitty-gritty of your security procedures. All right, so you've picked your destination. The next logical step, you got to figure out where you are on the map right now. This is the analysis phase, and it's all about taking a really hard, honest look at your current situation. So what you're actually doing here is a direct, meticulous comparison. You take your existing systems and your current way of doing things, and you hold them right up against that ideal baseline you chose. The whole point is to find every single weakness, every shortfall, every little gap.
So how do you even begin to tackle something so massive? Well, you don't try to evaluate a huge topic like security all at once. You can't boil the ocean, right? Instead, you break it down. You start with a big category, like access control, then you drill down into a specific piece, like account management, and then you get to very specific, answerable questions.
And just to give you an idea of how detailed this gets, let's stick with account management. You're not just asking, hey, do we manage accounts? No way. You're digging into the exact processes for how users get added and removed, how their permissions are set, how you handle super user accounts, and how often you're actually checking to make sure those permissions are still correct. It's that level of detail that makes this whole thing work.
So you've picked your destination, and you've mapped out exactly where you're starting from. All of that research and analysis leads to the most important part of this whole process, the actual plan, the map for your journey forward. And that plan usually comes in the form of a final gap analysis report. But this isn't just a giant document with all your findings. It's a strategic guide. It has to be clear, it has to be concise, and most importantly, it has to be a prioritized action plan.
One of the most powerful things you'll see in these reports is a summary table, kind of like this one. It gives you this amazing high-level, at-a-glance view of how everything is going across the board. You can immediately see where your biggest problems are. And the color coding is dead simple, but super effective. Green means you're doing pretty well, you're close to the standard. Yellow means, you're about halfway there. And red, well, red means you've got a lot of work ahead of you. And this is the magic of it. That color code instantly gives you a strategy. It tells you exactly where to focus your time and your money. For the biggest, quickest impact, you go after the red items first. This is so important because if you try to fix everything at once, you'll probably end up fixing nothing at all. Prioritization is everything. Of course, closing these gaps isn't magic. It costs something. The report makes it really clear what it's going to take to get from point A to point B. It lays out what you'll need to invest in, time, money, maybe new equipment, and the formal processes you'll need to make sure these changes happen smoothly.
But this all brings us to a really vital point. A gap analysis isn't about reaching some perfect finish line where you can just stop. The real value is thinking of it as a tool you use all the time to keep getting better. So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. A gap analysis is not a one-and-done project. You don't just finish it and stick it in a drawer.
The world is always changing, right? Technology changes, business changes, so this is a cycle. It's a living tool for constant improvement. It's kind of like that famous Kaizen philosophy at Toyota. It's never really done.
You know, one of our sources put it perfectly. The real purpose of all this is to create clarity. It said it provides that pathway so that we can understand what it's really going to take to move forward into the future. It's all about building that roadmap.
And that brings us to the final thought. Every company, every team, shoot, maybe even every single one of us, has a map like this, with a gap between where we are and where we'd like to be. So the question I'll leave you with is this: what red zones are hiding on your map?